So today we're going to talk about some different character art workflows, and I think this is like it's great for everyone who is a beginner, and even if you're an intermediate, you might not have heard of all of these like tools and workflows. So either way, it should be valuable things that I've been coming across as I've been working, and I think like one of the things that I've realized as creating 3D art is like there are always going to be shortcuts, and the faster you can move on, the more like motivation you'll keep. And like if things take too long, you tend to get bored with your project, or you tend to like feel like you could have done better, and you try to do something else, and you just kind of want to make new stuff. So I always try to find new ways to like cheat, and I don't think there is anything actually called cheating. But for a lot of people, this might be considered as cheating. But you should always work on your fundamentals. With that said, you should always work on anatomy. You should always work on your own painting skills and whatever. But I think it's great to try to find your own ways. And for me right now, one of the biggest things that I've learned to incorporate in my workflows is definitely subdivision workflows. And it kind of came to me pretty late as a 3D artist, because I used to like just like blotch my high poly meshes and like just divide them as much as I can, and then just dynamesh them to millions of polygons, and then just like sculpt away until I get nice results. But one of the things I realized is that you have to have subdivisions so that you can have smooth and nice surfaces and actually not destroy some of the things. So what I'm going to talk about first is that we have to understand how to work on a character. And one of the most important things is definitely blocking out a character. Today I'm going to show you how I work on faces only, but if we talk about this as a whole character, you would want to block out every single piece of your character at first before moving on, because there's one thing that you call like my old teacher told me that there's this thing called printer workflow, and then there's like this block out large, medium, small workflow. So the printer workflow is basically like when you print out a paper, it goes like from bottom to the top, and then you just perfect the face first, and then you perfect the chest, and then you perfect the legs or the shoes or whatever. But instead you should work like creating all the large details first, like the main block out of the face, the main block out of the body and whatever, and then you go to the medium details of the face, the medium details of the body, and then you go to the final details of the face and the final details of the body. Because if you just like do all the final details on the face, you might get like this disconnect between the work, and you use new techniques that you've learned and blah 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 blah. So the character will look different in quality of the face and the body. So one of the things that you might have heard of it as like primary, secondary, and tertiary details as well. And when I do faces, I always like, if you see the face that I've done here, it's a really blotchy, I don't know, block out of a face. There's a lot of inconsistencies here and there. I could actually mirror this just so that it's. And what I tend to do is I always like do a duplicate once I've done the messy version, and I can just rename this one to low poly. And one of the things I always use is the ZBrush tool. And if you haven't used the ZBrush yet, I highly recommend that you do. So it's in the geometry tab. You have this ZBrush tab here. And the ZBrush is super strong. I'm going to take my cap off so you can see me from the top here. The ZBrush has this different settings here. So you can have half, same, double, adapt. I always leave adapt on. I'm not really quite sure what that does. But this slider here tells the ZBrush how many polygons it's going to have. So if I drag this really low and then just hit ZBrush, it's going to make the polygons or the mesh in a more optimized way. So right now it's, if you can see up here, I have active 890,000 active points here, and it's going to do its best to just like make a low poly version of it. And this one looks really janky. So there are ways to make this a lot better. So one of the things that you have to use in the ZBrush tool is the ZBrush guides. and then you use BZR, and then you get these guides up here. And you can like kind of draw in lines as you want the polygon work, or the loop flow of the polygons to remesh. So I try to like find the more you, by the way, you can adjust your drawing size here. So if your drawing size is really huge, you get these like big lines. But if you make it quite small, you can get into more details. So I try to like draw around the nose here, maybe something around the mouth, maybe around the ear. You could be like really detail here for a better result. But I always try to find like just the basics at least, because this is not going to be, in the end, you're going to have to do a retopo of this anyway. But it's a good start to just like kind of find a nice flow here for the face. Because what we want is a better topology of the character. Because if you see right now, it's just like it's super dense. Doesn't look good at all. So I'm going to, all right, I got these guides here. And maybe actually I'll do around the mouth as well, because this one is going to be a tough one for the ZBrush to understand. This one didn't connect. Maybe I'll do something around the nose tip as well. All right. This should be fine. And then we hit the ZBrush again. And I think that is going to give me quite a bad result once more. So I'm going to show you another trick that's going to help me. But first, I just want to see what the results is giving, because this tool is very strong. Sometimes I don't have to do all these extra steps. I just ZBrush it once, depending on what I'm doing. Of course, the more complex a mesh is, the harder time it has. All right, so this looks kind of okay. But first of all, I'm going to increase the poly count here. I see that it's like 4,000. I tried to look for like for a face. It's you have to like be subjective with each mesh that you create. But with the face, I've found that like around 16,000 is a good point. But I'm going to show you here in the settings of the ZBrush, you have this thing called Use Polypaint. So how that thing works is that if you use the Polypaint brush tool here, I'm not sure if this is actually, see here, right. So it has these 3 different colors. So it's red, it's white, and it's blue. So the redder the mesh is, the more dense the topology there is going to be projected. And the bluer it is, the less dense. White is kind of neutral. So I try to look for places where I can find like, okay, so in the forehead here, the back of the head, I don't really need much topology, right? Because it's like it's a flat surface. But around the eyes, of course, we want a lot of detail. Around the nose, we want a lot of detail. Around the mouth, and possibly around the ear. The ear shouldn't be as dense, but I'm just going to do this now because we're just demonstrating here anyway. And you can actually fade this. So it's going to have, if you look here in this tab, it has this color density thing. And it's going to figure out that faded colors, like this pinkish, works as well. So you can actually kind of control how much you want it. So around the neck, I'll give it some pinkishness because I might want to have some wrinkles there or whatever. All right, let's try to ZBrush this again. And the goal for this, the entire thing I'm doing right here, is that I want a smoother mesh for the surface of this face right now. So I want to get rid of all of these clay-ish lines that I've got. And this looks quite okay. I mean, if you look at the topology, there's some bits here that's not really cool, but you can smooth it out. But it's broken here. I'm going to try once more with slightly more poly count. And once I got like a nice result, I'm going to divide it and try to smooth it out. And so the reason for this is that I want to work, like I said before, I want large, medium, small details. So I'm seeing this as like the large details. I've done the entire block out. You can see that as the large details. And right now I'm just trying to fix these areas where the topology is kind of jagged. All right, this looks fine. And then we can look at the high poly here. So we have both the high poly and the low poly. And what we're going to do now is project these mesh on top of the other one. So I'm going to divide it once. And you see that already I have this smooth result, right? But I've lost a lot of the details. So I'm going to go like, let's see, maybe 3 subdivisions up here. So right now I'm at 160,000 compared to this one, which is 890,000. And then in this subtool tab here, if you scroll down, you find this small tab called project. And then you have these different options. It's called, you have geometry and you have color. I'm just going to have geometry on because I don't need the color. And then I'm just going to select project all here. And instantly I have the old face from the high poly now on my low poly. And I can scroll down to my low subdivisions and I can go back up. And this is super useful because now that I have this one here, I can start smoothing out these areas. One thing that I can do is if you ever use like, let's see here if we can find it, morph target here. You can store a morph target. I have it down here in my own interface. You can store a morph target here, and what that does is like I can sculpt around here, and then I can just like drag this and decide how much influence I want on it. So I'm going to store this morph target, and then I'm going to start smoothing the entire mesh out. So all these areas where I don't want this sculpty, clayiness, I'm going to smooth that out. So I still have these facial features of the character. I've blocked out. Really, I've been super. Okay, let's see. There you go. All right, we have a much smoother mesh. And if I feel like I've lost like details somewhere, I can use BMG and we find this morph brush target here. And what that does is essentially it takes back from before, like the history of before I started smoothing. So if I want like more details from the eyes to stay there, I can go back there and maybe I want some more from the lips here. So I don't want to lose those details. Maybe something is missing here from the eyebrows. All right, cool. Now that I've got this done, basically I don't need this high poly anymore. This was just the block out, and this topology is useless. So I'm just going to throw it down here, and this is the one that I'm going to be using right now. So let's talk about the difference of working like in a Dynamesh mesh or just like something that's really dense, and this mesh that I've just created. So the first thing is that I have subdivisions, right? And I can actually go even higher. And the higher I have, obviously, I got more subdivisions and I got more polygons here. So I can go in and actually draw like super small details right now, right? And if I go down like that, I can't do any small details right now. But once I got to this point, where I have these subdivisions, and I'm thinking of, I've done the large details, and now it's time for me to do the medium details. And the medium details should be seen as like bigger wrinkles, anything that's not like pores or scars or anything like if you have beard or something like that. So right now I'm going to try to do like, for example, we can say I wanted to do like creases on the eyelids here. So maybe someone who had this like super dense mesh here, they would just start going in here with a damn standard and start doing this, you know, and try to get some wrinkles here. Let's say she's really old. We want these like to look super wrinklish. And already I see like, okay, this looks kind of bad. And this is like, the main reason for this is because I already have it in such a high subdivision. So what I would want to do instead is go back here. I want to start doing the details from these large subdivisions first. And maybe this one is too big. Well, let's say if I had like a really big wrinkle going on here, I would like to start with that one first. And once I go up in the subdivision, it looks so much smoother. And maybe I'll go to the second subdivision here and I do some more wrinkles. This. And then I keep moving up, you know. It's like a super fast demonstration, but I think you're gonna get my point in just a few minutes. Smooth the edges a bit. And already I see that like these wrinkles are so much better than the first ones that I made. And the best thing about subdivision workflow right now is that if I, let's say, started to, if I think that you had like too thick of an eyelid, I would like this eyelid to be a lot more like flattened. Let's say I wanted it like flattened like this. She'd been sleeping better. All right. Now that I've flattened it, I've lost all my wrinkles, right? And obviously I don't want that. So if I have these wrinkles and I now go down to the lowest subdivision and I start like flattening it out on this subdivision instead, and I go back to my highest one, I still got these wrinkles, but it's flattened out. So this is one of the good reasons like why I don't want to have only high subdivisions. Because if let's make an even clearer example. If this was the final step, the texture details, right? And we have, like, let's say I have a few skin pores. See if I can import some. I think I have some. Let's do this. ZBrush. Now we have skin here. Let's take these pores. Oh, that was a bit strong. I've started making some pores here. This is super simple. Right. And we have these nice textures here that I've been spending 2 hours on creating. And I want to do the same thing, right? I want this to be flatter. So I start smoothing and I lose my pores and my wrinkles. That wouldn't happen if I just went down these subdivisions and started smoothing it here. And once I go back up, I still have my pores and wrinkles. So it's super important to have these subdivisions because once you start doing things like you've come to this point of your character creation and you want to make adjustments to your character, like, okay, I want her to have bigger cheeks or whatever. It's super important to have these subdivisions because if I want to like make the nose bigger or whatever, it's gonna be like, let's show this instead. If I have the higher subdivision and I start using the move tool, I start doing this like a few times, like the smaller ones. This looks crazy. But I get like a lot of artifacts going on here. But if I do this on a lower subdivision instead, I have much more control over the topology to make sure that once I go back up, this is still going to be a smooth, like I still have this flat surface on the nose here. So try to always remember, like once you've done with the block out, you're gonna do some zero mesh and then just like project your own your previous mesh on top of it and then just like redo it. And this would be the same if I would say, let's say this character is now a some kind of, I don't know, fantasy creature with horns, right? Okay, so I would like this character to have horns here. And already I start making this clay adjustments. I have to start smoothing it out. I get this a lot of like annoying textures going on here. And I have to smooth it and blah, 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 blah. This is such a workaround. If I would have instead just go back down to the lower subdivisions, and I first start on this one, and then I go to the next one, you know? Then the next one. And I go back up, I see the surface of this is already smooth enough to create like I don't know, a little horn. Where'd she go? Let's say she has these horns, right? Okay, super. That looks crazy. Right. And once I've done this, like one of the things I always think about with projection is you can never project too many times. So, okay, now I'm doing it wrong. See, I'm trying to teach you something here, and I'm going against my own methods. Let's say I've done this, and I've used the move tool, and now I'm already losing topology right here. It looks like these topologies or these polygons are stretched. You can see it in the lower topology, and probably I would want to be able to create the same type of details. Like if I use the skin pores here right now, you see that the quality here is much lower than this quality here. So what I would do is like, okay, now I've decided that I want to make major changes to my character. I want to do the same process again. So I would just duplicate this one. I would go through the entire thing, like draw the ZBrush guides, do this thing, and ZBrush it again, project it so that the topology of these horn sockets here are as balanced as the rest of the face. And that way I can just like add more and more details, add new horns or other features that you want your character to have. And the same goes if like you decide to like, okay, I want to make this character a really stylized, I don't know, male character with like a huge jawline going like full chat, you know? And already I can see if I go down here, like these polygons here are much more stretched than these. So once I've done that, I still want to go project it once again and go for a better result in the topology. I'm going to see if I can undo these horns real quick. We can delete this mesh here. All right, so I'm going to show you something that's pretty interesting about this thing as well. So I've only shown you like the geometry side of this thing, but you can actually use projection to, because a lot of times when I sculpt, I find that having a face like this and in just like one shade, most of the times I have like this grayish shade, it's hard for me to actually know where I should add my details to. So one of the things that I told you before, I like to try to find shortcuts, right? And we have this super powerful tool called MetaHumans, right? And I downloaded this MetaHuman face, and this is some random guy, just a face. And I took this guy and I kind of just like adjusted him slightly to be more, if I show you what I'm doing here, to be more on the topology of my other mesh. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to look really janky. And from this part here is when I go to the projection again, and then I project his geometry to match hers. So I just project that, and now I got this one, right? And it looks terrible because he has a beard, but whatever. And then I think I actually might have one without a beard. Let's see. All right, I have one without a beard. When we get these like janky lines here, we can fix that. We can just smooth it out. We can just try to project it again. A lot of the times when you get these like errors from the projection, you can just try to smooth it. You can look and just like try to move it around and match your mesh a bit better. like this. And then you just keep like re-projecting it. So that once you're happy with this, like, okay, this looks all right, I guess. And now I can use because this is just a UV map, right? It doesn't actually have any color on it. If I remove the texture map, it's like, it has this metahuman poly paint thing going on. What I can do instead is I can go to this poly paint tabs here, and I can make poly paint from texture. So now the UV map the texture map isn't on anymore. This is my actual poly paint. So I can start painting on top of this, right? This means that I can take my other mesh, the one that I'm actually working on. I can go down to the project settings here, and I can switch off the geometry and use color instead. And the way that projection works, actually, I should have told you that before, is that it only projects from the two meshes that are active. So if I start, like, if I have these eyebrows here active, it's going to project that as well. But you only want to have those, the one thing that you're projecting has to be active here. So now I have this metahuman face, and I have my mesh, and then I just try to project the color. And then it says, do you want to project the polypaint data? And I say yes. Okay, and now we have a base to work with. So a lot of the times you get these like errors or whatever. You can obviously just go in and try to fix those. Color dab with C. Then you just like paint over that. I'm not looking for a perfect texture here. I'm just looking for something that's a nice foundation for me to start sculpting with. And then you can like just fill this in. I don't know. It doesn't really matter that much. I just want something to work with. Cool. And we can go out of solo mode. We can, oh, those eyes looks terrible. There we go. All right. So now I have like a pretty solid poly paint. I have a pretty nice topology here to work with. Obviously, if I had made this for production, I would have sitting like at least maybe an hour to make sure that this ZBrush is really good, because once I start sculpting here, if my topology here is bad and I want to have like really nice details in some places and I have like this unbalanced topology, I'm not going to be able to do it well. So sometimes I really sit and make sure that the topology is correct for the character so that I can make all the details that I want and we have no flaws later in the process. But obviously you can always like ZBrush as you go. All right, so once I've gotten to this like to this point, I try to like, also you can see here that since I warped this mesh here, he had like these wrinkles in his forehead around here, and I use the move tool, so it looks kind of weird. So I'll just paint over that so that we don't get confused by these wrinkles. But then I'll use this poly paint mesh as like a guide as to where I should put my details. So now I have this like, okay, the eye looks kind of bad here. I'll go down the subdivisions. This is too far down, but right here I can see like I can smooth this out, go back up, start looking for places where I can add details. Obviously, one of the things I haven't mentioned is like you always have to have references. If you don't have any references, like you're going to be going crazy because you can't guess anatomy, right? Right now for this showcase, I will be guessing, but you should see my reference boards. I can't show you because I'm in the studio right now and we have NDAs, but my reference boards at home are huge, probably like 40 to 50 pictures, depending on what I'm trying to do. Oh shit, I see, I haven't been answering any questions right now. Would you recommend to retopo first before detailing, or is it okay to ZBrush then detailing, then retopo as the last step? I would definitely not do a retopo first. Like I don't retopo until it's done. I'm gonna see if I can answer any other questions. Something that I do with ZBrushing that helps a lot is polygroup in areas of the skull. To click in the polygroup, really. I'll take the polygroups into account then. Yeah, that's a really, really great way, David. Dion, I'm sorry I didn't catch that question. Would you do this in the large detail stage? What is this? Several people typing, so I can't see. This was regarding to merging the metahuman shaped mesh. No, I kind of do this like just to have something to work with. This is not like any final textures or anything like that. As soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to like just retopo this and send it to Substance Painter, and I'm going to do my own custom skin mesh. I'm just using the metahuman to not poly paint myself inside of ZBrush, because I always feel like if you don't have poly paint in ZBrush, you kind of get crazy by all this grayish mesh going on. So I try to poly paint as much as I can, even the clothing or whatever I'm doing in my character. I try to at least block out the colors so that I feel comfortable seeing like the differences between things. Because if you have a huge mesh that's just like all grayed out, it's kind of hard to see the details and the difference between things. Yes, of course I can share my UI file later, but I always recommend to do your own even more, because it's your own thing. But I've shared mine to a lot of people, and then they've made their own out of it, so you can do that. I've never seen this before, so I'm making a lot of notes. But are there any guides or links that we could use that you know about? So this is kind of like a collection of things that I've taught myself, because I rarely look at tutorials. The times that I look at tutorials is like when I have like a certain question, like, okay, where do I find this tool that I know should be in the software? And then I Google that and I find the YouTube, and then like, I try to find these certain tools, but I don't know of any tutorials that would talk about this workflow, unfortunately. How do you approach texture details, texture to micro details if you're doing it manually without XYZ textures, special brushes, noisemakers? Okay, so there's this, see if I can just pull this up. If you Google Pixelogic alpha brushes, you'll find, see if I can show you this tab. This first here, and then you have this skins tab here, and then they give you a lot of free alphas. So those are the alphas that I actually loaded in. And like I said before, you have to have references, and then you just like literally, once you're done with all the medium details, you go and just like use the standard brush, use the drag rect selection here, and then you start just like putting them in, like getting the pores in. And you have to use different brushes. You can't just use one of them, because in the end it's going to look really unnatural. And I always say like there's no use in having symmetry on, because no human beings are symmetrical. So try to not do what I'm doing right here, but I'm trying to show you something quick. And once you're done with this, like you have to go inside and kind of like use the dam standard to like make these small, small like imperfections in the wrinkles. Right now I would probably have this divided once more as well, so that I'm at 10 mil. It depends on your computer, right? And what type of realism you want to it. But the human skin is like really wrinkled at places, and you can use the standard brush without any alphas to kind of like enhance some places. See, like if I lock in here, I can just like add some more wrinkleness to here. And this is like it's just a matter of how long you're gonna sit and zoom in on certain areas and places, because it's there's nothing about creating realistic faces that goes fast, unfortunately. So if I would have had like these eye wrinkles now, and I feel like I want to enhance this, I can do it in my high subdivision, or I'll do it in my low subdivision first, you know, quite low intensity here. We'll start doing these. And then you can use the pinch tool, BPI, and try to like pinch these wrinkles together a bit so that it doesn't look too spread out, you know. Right. If anyone knows why these fiber meshes like lose color all the time, please let me know. Sometimes they just go black for no reason at all. Anyway, symmetry is good for you when you're in the early stages of the sculpt, but you got to break away from it in later stages. Yes, of course. I mean, in the end, like you don't want to be taking too long just because you're not making a symmetrical mesh. But like once I'm here, I probably would have stopped using symmetry a lot earlier. You know, I want to have like, oops, like kind of a crooked nose or whatever when I'm working on my character, because most of the people aren't symmetrical, like I said before. But definitely in the first thing. Is fiber mesh used in game production? Definitely not. I only use this like fiber mesh to kind of get a sense of where I would put the eyebrow. So if I start moving like this, yeah, it's just like as a guide for myself when I'm working in ZBrush. Okay, so I've only kind of showed you like user cases for realistic meshes, but if we were to talk about this making like a stylized character, so let's say if we have this stylized character, maybe she would have had like a lot more like flatter eyebrows here, something like this. You can already see I'm getting issues here once I use the flatten tool. It's like getting these weird areas. If I flatten, I get a lot of like small things, which is kind of annoying. If I smooth it out, it still doesn't really look that flat. But if I would have done this in the lower subdivision, you know what I'm going to say? This is basically like modeling, like hard surface modeling. Even better if I start using my wireframe here. I can actually see like these lines here. Maybe I'll just use the damp standard here to make this sharp. I can actually start moving this like okay, and then I use the flatten tool again. And now I have this sharp edge, and if I go full, you know, it gets a lot smoother in the end. Especially if I work on it on all of the different subdivision levels, like working up. Right? Maybe I want to give her like a much more chiseled cheekbone here. I go like really giving her this demonic look. I don't know. And I will say that I'm not a stylized master, but I know that this technique works. You see, once I go back up to the higher subdivision levels, it doesn't look as janky. And this would work very well, especially if you're making like semi-stylized as well. If you're doing things like Apex Legends or something that's not entirely like full League of Legends, you know. But subdivision workflow is the way to go for sure. There's not so much time left, so I'm thinking like, first of all, if you have any questions, I'll answer questions. But I want to show you something else as well, like a little bonus. But first, I'm going to see if anyone has any questions, and I'll try to answer those. Okay, do a quick tutorial on how you approach clothes folds. I use Marvelous Designer. But if I were to make any clothing folds, like for example, okay, let's see. I wanted to do it in ZBrush. Let's make a plane here. Let's give her a little hat. If you guys don't know, if you make planes and you're annoyed that it disappears, you do have this. See if it's display properties. You can find this. First of all, you have the flip, so it's now on the other side. We can put it on double, and now you see both of the sides here. If you have ZBrush, I think it's 2021 and upwards, you have a dynamics tab here. And this is like simulating gravity, right? You can use this. It's quite terrible many times, but oops. If you set the collision first and then you just like kind of run it, oh, that's a really non-firm mesh. It can actually create some some cloth, right? But what I would think about, let's just see if we can divide this once, and then we can. Oh, it's running off. Let's make it a bit bigger. Divide it again. Right, so we have like a base cloth thingy here. I would probably go back down to the lower subdivisions, and I would delete the higher, and then would make new subdivisions again. And the same thing goes when you do cloth, right? You have to have subdivision levels, because if you don't, you're going to be facing some terrible artifacts. So if I wanted to have like a smaller, I always use the standard brush, just the normal standard brush, and then you try to like make these folds. And you have to have, because if you look at folds, they have to be kind of smooth. But you already see like I have these like little, I don't know how to actually explain it, but my old mentor said that my previous clothing sculpts looked kind of bubbly, and bubbliness is what you want to avoid. So the lower you work on the subdivisions, the less bubbliness you get. So if I would have done this on here instead, like get it smoother, and then I move up, it gets a lot less bubbly. But you have to like work with a lot of different tools. I use the inflate tool. I use the damp standard. Maybe I'll kind of do like one of these V folds. And then I just try to like quite hard to explain. You have to like really look at some references for this. But the lower your subdivisions, the smoother your clothing folds get. But as well as that, I think there are some nice clothing fold alphas that you could download. I think like if you see if I can find it. I think I have. No, this is not the ones. I don't have them here, but I do have them home. You can definitely Google for some nice like alphas where you can just like stamp on literal cloth, and that's very good for like just setting like a base foundation. Then you'll have to do it. But for sure, if you want to do something realistic, I always recommend people to start looking into Marvelous Designer, because it's going to be a very useful thing. But you have to know both of the things. You can't just know Marvelous Designer, and you can't just know sculpting, especially if you want to work in the studio or AAA or something like that. You need to have both of the skill sets, because especially for employers, they're going to value the more things you know, obviously. So the last thing I wanted to show you guys is, see if I can load this one here. Maybe I'll just, we have a lot of nerds in this community, obviously. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of the word kit bashing. And kit bashing is essentially what they used to make like Star Wars battleships and stuff. Like they just like took junk and glued them together and made really cool stuff. And one of the things that a lot of like Warhammer creators do is like they take a helmet from one character and then put it on another, and that's also like a form of kit bashing. And this character that I made here is like a huge collection of kit bashes. So what I've done here is basically I've used only preset IMMs on this character. So all of these like cool sci-fi stuff here, this is really nothing that I've been sculpting myself or modeling. I've instead just like went to the IMM to see if I can find these here. What is it? BI. This is something cool here. Model kit. Usually I just like insert a plane. I rotate it 90 degrees so that it's flat. And I kind of use this as like a model ground. So let's make like this cool cylinder here. You know what? I'm going to do this. Hide everything else. Double display, cool. And I can use symmetry so that I can snap to this middle point of the plane. And then I'll just drag this thing out. If I have perspective on, it's going to be quite skewed. But if I turn off perspective so that I'm sure that this is the front view, I can kind of like put this down here, just go to another IMM. That's not the middle. And then I'll just grab something else. Take this one. Maybe I'll size that up, drag it down. Take this one. You know? And this way, like now we have a cool little rocket engine thing. Let's go to, what do we have here? Spaceship. What's the spaceship part? Would you do hard surface in ZBrush or a different software? Well, this character that I've done here is fully ZBrush workflow. So I would definitely do it in ZBrush, but I'm a ZBrush cowboy, so what can I say? A lot of people tend to do a lot of things in like Maya or Blender. I've done it, but I'm a lot better in ZBrush, so. Oh, that's not cool. All right, there we go. And now I have this one. Maybe I'll do something like this. Maybe we can put this inside of another shape. Flatten this out. Maybe I'll do something like this. Push this to the front. I'm gonna hide this one. Just push this thing. Oops. Push this thing back. Oh, now I have this like weird groupings. I'm just gonna regroup this thing. Cool. Working on this. Like I'm not doing anything like groundbreaking here. I'm just trying to make this cool little shape. Maybe I can use the move tool to, oops, just like shape it a bit. And then we'll go, maybe we'll do this, hide the plane. This is annoying. Okay, I can do that. I'm gonna mask this. Why? Why is it masking everything? Okay, there we go. And maybe we can split mask points. So I have this one alone, and we can like just duplicate it, mirror and weld. No, we're going to change the axis. Cool, and now we have this cool little sci-fi thingy going on. And this is essentially how I made, like, if I show you. Like all of this stuff going on in the back here. All of these things are just made from different types of IMMs. Does ZBrush have a multi-cut tool like Maya? So some of these shape that I've had here, it's not really a multi-cut because I'm assuming you're talking about like a knife tool. How did you make the grids? Like this? Or what do you mean grids? Oh, you're meaning like the perforated this thing here. This is just like a dynamic plane. So if I have a plane here, my friend Malte, who's actually in this chat right now, he showed me this. Great trick to let's see if we can find this. Oh, holy crap! Dynamic, and then you go to dynamic subdivision, and then you have micropoly here, and then you can like choose this hex plane, whatever, and then you have this perforated area. You can find a lot of different things here. You have like cloth, you have chain mails. A really great way to do a lot of things. You can check that out. Just YouTube micropoly ZBrush. Like you can get some really nice stuff going on here. Let's see, where was I? So the multi-cut tool, like one of the things I do use in ZBrush is like when I create a mesh piece like this, for example. This is not modeled. This is a really janky piece. And then I kind of like just take a cube out, and then I divide it like a bunch of times. Maybe I want to crease it first. In geometry, you have this tab called crease. And if I just like crease, I can crease all here. And I divide it, it's going to stay sharp, even if I divide it. And I can delete lower. Now I have this super dense cube here. And if you press Control and Shift, you know, you have Control for masking. And if you have Control Shift, you get a different tool set up here. And if you use Clip Curve, and you can set this to curve or lasso or whatever. I always use the curve because it's like, it gives me a really, really sharp edge here. And I can start making some really interesting shapes with this. This might be a bit dense actually. Okay, so if I want to make like a cool sci-fi piece, I always use symmetry because I want something nice looking. I'll just do this, and I'll do something like that. You know, maybe I can just like use a mask rectangle here. I'll extrude it downwards. Oh, now I have the underside. Hey, that looks pretty cool too. But I probably don't want to do that. I'll mask that piece as well. You know, can mask this piece here. And I unmask the inside of it. We'll drag that out. Oh, and now I got the other side. That's not cool. Instead, I'll just slice it on the sides. Maybe I want this piece to be like, I can duplicate it. I can slice it up. Ooh, look, that's a cool piece. Maybe I'll remove this part on this one. And now we have a whatever sci-fi piece. I can merge these together. And I'll put it on a random spot on my character because sci-fi doesn't make sense. And look at that. Would any of you question that? No, looks cool. Awesome. How do you go about apologizing kit bash character models? I've only ever seen people talk about concept art models. I actually, this character that I have here, let's see if I can show you. I have a blog post on like the entire workflow that I created for this. So on my ArtStation, I have a blog post where I showed you like, this is the concept that I made, and like a lot of, there's a lot of text here, but like how I broke down the reference sheet. And this was my first failed test of projection. You can see this is what I talked about earlier, Z-remeshing. And then I started the block out. So you see how blotchy it is. Here's the thing that I'm showing you right now, the clip tool. And creating some stuff, you know. Here's the kit bashing that I made for the jet engine piece in the backside. You can just look through this art post and you'll see a lot of different techniques. I can link it here if you want to. But a lot of like things. And once I was done with these shapes, I did some retopology in Blender, but I only picked like the bigger pieces. So if I go back to ZBrush here, I picked like this piece here. This is a huge piece. So I went into Blender and then I just like retopologized it. And then once I was back in ZBrush, I just like this was the Blender version. And then I just like divided it a bunch of times so that I got this super sharp, edgy thing. But like before that, it still looked like something like this. It wasn't bad, you know. So you kind of have to sculpt away first. But this character was never finished. So if I probably would have retopologized all of it. But like if you look at this piece as well, this is just like a pretty bad piece. But once I divide it, it looks kind of cool. I think like this is also just like sculpted. You can see that it's not a great topology at all. So if I was in production for this, I would have retopologized the whole thing, so that it would be like super, like this would be a straight line here. Oops, like that, you know, it would be really sharp. But I would have to do that in Blender or Maya, whichever software you use. You can probably use 3ds Max as well. There's a lot of things like you have to find different workflows for different things. Like there's not going to be one answer for everything. Like if you especially in character art, you have to work like with organic features. You have to work with hard surface features and a lot of different stuff that have different workflows. But I think that the best thing you can do is always try to Google as much as you can, honestly. There's a super nice button here in ZBrush called Save As. Just save the file in a new thing. You have a copy, and then you just a bunch of different buttons here. You mash them. You try everything around here. Because like I said before, like I rarely watch tutorials. Instead, I try to like navigate myself inside of the software. There's so many things in ZBrush, and if you're afraid of clicking buttons, you're gonna end up not knowing anything about the thing. You can look at tutorials as much as you want, and you will find a lot of good things. Like when I actually got my first mentor, there were a lot of things I was like, holy shit, how did I miss this? So I'm not saying stop YouTubing or stop Googling for tutorials, but you have to explore the software as well on your own. Like just take 15 to 30 minutes every time you open the software and mash buttons and look for cool tools and stuff. And then you try to find other things.